Prince Harry and Meghan had with Oprah last night, including some of the moments that did not air last night.
5 years. That's how long Oprah Winfrey has said nothing about the 6 seconds that changed the monarchy.
Thinking of harming yourself? Were you having suicidal thoughts?
Yes, this was very, very clear.
The lean in, the finger to the lips, and 4 words that went round the world in a single afternoon. Were you silent or were you silenced?
Were you silent or were you silenced?
This month, she finally broke that silence in Vanity Fair, and the word she now uses for them is clarification. Watch her face when she says it, because that is not a woman defending the biggest interview of her career. So, what happened after that garden that Oprah Winfrey no longer wants her name on? Clarification. Let's deal with what was actually said, because the detail matters here. Winfrey told Vanity Fair 2 things about the March 2021 sit-down. The first is straightforward enough. Harry and Meghan did not know the questions in advance. She'd told them she intended to cover everything, and then she covered everything. 3.5 hours of tape. No script handed over, no vetting, no list. The second is the one everybody has been waiting 5 years to hear. On the silenced moment, she says she asked it because she wanted to be clear. Was Meghan silent, or was Meghan silenced? Were people actually telling her not to speak? She says she didn't want to be accused later on of letting an ambiguity slide past her. Listen again to what she has just told you she wanted to know. Were people telling her not to talk? That is a question. That is in fact a very good question. That is precisely the question that 40 years of experience is supposed to produce in a moment like that one. She didn't ask it. What she asked was silent or silenced. And those 4 words don't request information. They supply a conclusion. One of those options is passive and slightly sad. The other one has a villain in it, and Meghan, who is a professional, took the one with the villain in it, said the latter, and the world had its headline before the first ad break. Then the follow-up never came. Who silenced you? Which person, on which day, said which words? Was there an instruction, a document, a conversation? The courtiers have said publicly that they offered support. So, is that untrue? Name one of them. Nothing. Not a single one. The most experienced interviewer alive, sitting on the most valuable get of her career, and the trail simply went cold the second the answer landed on the tape. So, when Oprah now tells us she was seeking clarity, the obvious reply is that clarity is what happens when you ask the second question. What she did instead was offer a shape and let the guest fill it in. That is not clarification. In my opinion, that's a setup with a soft voice. And look, if you're finding this useful, subscribe before we go any further, because what I'm about to show you is the part that actually matters. The most damning thing Oprah said in that magazine wasn't about the silence question at all. It's 3 words she dropped in, almost as an aside, and I don't think anybody has picked up on them yet. That's 60 seconds away. Win-win. Here they are. She was asked how she persuaded them into that garden in the first place, and she described the pitch she made. This was going to be a win-win. Good for them. Good for her. Now, count the winners in that sentence. There is Harry and Meghan, who came out of it with a global sympathy narrative and the most trusted name in American television standing behind it. And there is Oprah Winfrey, who came out of it with 49 million viewers and the interview she had wanted for the better part of her adult life. That is the whole list. Not a win for the audience, who were owed something like scrutiny. Not a win for the institution that was about to be accused of racism on global television, with no name attached, no date attached, and no opportunity to answer. Not a win for the 2 people in their 90s in Windsor, one of whom was in a hospital bed while it went out. And here's the thing about a win-win. A win-win is not an interview. A win-win is an arrangement. You do not tell a subject in advance that the encounter will be good for them and then apply serious pressure to them on camera, because pressure, by its nature, might not be good for them at all. The moment you promise somebody a win, you have quietly promised them you won't dig. She said the quiet part out loud, and I don't think she even noticed. 2 winners were priced into that afternoon before a single camera was switched on, which raises the only question that really matters. If 2 people were guaranteed to win, who exactly was booked in to lose? 30 years of no. To answer that, you have to understand what Oprah was actually buying, and it was never Meghan Markle. Meghan was simply the one who said yes. Because according to reporting that royal correspondents have been repeating for decades, Winfrey had been circling the British royal family for something like 30 years. That was not a secret in television. It was practically a running joke. She wanted Diana. The genuine article, the most wanted interview on the planet, and by every account, she went after it properly. And Diana, who understood the machinery of fame better than almost anybody who has ever lived, said no, politely, graciously, and kept every bit of her dignity in the process. Years later, the reporting goes, an approach was made in the direction of William and Catherine, and the same door closed, just as quietly. Look at what that tells you. The senior royals, the ones with the training, the ones who understand that an institution survives precisely by not explaining itself, took one look at a daytime confessional format and declined. They didn't need it. They were never going to hand 1,000 years of continuity over to be taken apart across 2 hours for somebody else's ratings night. 30 years of asking, 30 years of being told no by everybody who mattered. And the only member of that family who ever finally said yes was the one already halfway out of the door. The one with an image that needed rebuilding and a grievance that needed an audience. That is not a scoop. In my opinion, that's a consolation prize being held up as a career crown. And she got it. She actually got it. So why, 5 years later, is she sitting in a magazine wincing at her own footage? What Meghan was buying, because the other side of that arrangement wanted something just as badly. Cast your mind back to where Meghan Markle was in early 2021, the Megxit fallout still burning. The bullying allegations reported in the Times, allegations she has always strenuously denied, and which Buckingham Palace confirmed it would review. But the findings of that review have never been published to this day. A British press corps that had comprehensively turned, a public image that needed a hard reset and needed it fast. And what is the most effective image laundering machine in the English-speaking world? It is a woman in a garden with a soft voice, asking how it made you feel. 49 million people watched. 2 reputations received exactly the treatment they had been booked in for. And the family that had opened its doors to her, the family that, whatever else you want to say about it, actually let her in, was handed the bill for both of them. But that bill was never paid in ratings points. It was paid by 2 people who had no way of answering back at all. The people who couldn't answer. Back that program went out while the Duke of Edinburgh was in hospital. He died within weeks of it. Now, I am not going to stand here and tell you that one caused the other, because I don't know that, and neither does anybody else. And anyone who tells you otherwise is selling something. But the timing is the timing. A family was asked to absorb the most serious accusation you can level at anyone, in front of a global audience, at the exact moment its patriarch was gravely ill. And there is reporting that the Sussex camp were unmoved by suggestions the broadcast be held back. Then the late Queen, a woman in her 90s, in the last stretch of a reign that had already been forced to deal with the Andrew catastrophe, who then had to sit and take her own family being accused of racism and cruelty by a grandson she plainly adored, and who answered the entire thing in 10 short lines. Recollections may vary, and nothing else, ever. I want you to sit with how extraordinary that is. 10 lines. From a woman who had spent 70 years perfecting the art of not commenting, faced with the single most damaging broadcast of her reign, and choosing 3 words that concede the other side might believe what they're saying, while declining to accept a word of it. No lawyers, no counter-interview, no friendly briefing to a sympathetic paper. And that wasn't restraint for its own sake. That was arithmetic. Because here is the trap that family was standing in, and it is worth understanding properly. They could not rebut a single claim without escalating it. Deny the racism allegation, and you generate a fresh news cycle in which the palace is publicly arguing about racism. Name the person who supposedly said it, and you have destroyed them for a conversation nobody can verify. Correct the smallest detail, and the correction becomes the headline for another week. There was no move available that did not make it worse. So, they took it, silently, for years. That is what dignity actually looks like, and it photographs terribly. Nobody clips it. Silence has never once gone viral, which is exactly why it works. That was the cost of the win-win, not to Oprah, who went back to work, not to Meghan, who had a brand to build, to 2 people at the very end of their lives who were handed the accusation and denied the reply. And the woman who structured that afternoon has now decided she'd rather not be associated with it. When you own the scissors, which, if you've followed her career, will not surprise you in the slightest, there is a pattern, and it can be stated in one sentence. Oprah Winfrey elevates people, lends them her credibility, and is reliably somewhere else by the time the story breaks. Dr. Phil, Dr. Oz. The Brazilian so-called faith healer she promoted on her own program, who was later convicted of appalling crimes against women. Every time, the introduction was hers. Every time, when the reckoning arrived, she was already clear of it. The charge that follows her around, and it is a fair one, is that she is forever at the scene and never once holding the knife. Now, apply that to this. In that garden, she had the questions, she had the guests, and, the part people forget, she had the edit. She decided what stayed in, what came out, and precisely how 49 million people met the Sussexes that night. When you own the scissors, you are never the one who gets cut, which is what makes the Vanity Fair moment so revealing. A woman with that much leverage could have had that clip taken off the table with a phone call. Not this one, next question. She has earned that 100 times over. She didn't. She let it be played, she squirmed, and she waved it away. That is not conscience. That is asset management. And she is not the only one currently trying to get clear of that garden. 11,000 miles from home. Because while Oprah is in a magazine quietly filing that interview under old business, the other woman in that garden is on the far side of the planet, on MasterChef Australia, telling a room full of contestants that food is her love language and cooking is how she connects with the people she loves. Consider the distance traveled, not the miles, although flying to Melbourne because there was no chair going in Los Angeles, or London tells you something all on its own. I mean the distance from I was silenced to a segment on how to cut fruit. And it is a harder pivot than it looks, because lifestyle television has one requirement above all others. The audience has to want to be in your kitchen. That is the entire product. Not the recipe, not the plating, the wanting. Nigella has it. The whole format collapses without it. You cannot cast it. You cannot buy it. Which is why the reaction has been what it has. The pitch rests on warmth, on home, on the people you cook for. And the audience has a long memory. They remember a father who watched the wedding on television like the rest of us. A half-sister fought in open court. A mother sitting largely alone on her side of that chapel. You can put whatever you like on the plate. If the people watching don't believe the person holding it, none of it lands. And there is a wrinkle in it that I find genuinely enjoyable. Reporting earlier this year suggested her team took firm objection to being described as royalty in a commercial setting. And here she is, on a show building a challenge around a dish fit for a duchess. You cannot wear the tiara and the apron at the same time. At some point, love, you have to pick one. Meanwhile, 11,000 miles away, her husband was having a considerably worse month. A complete and obvious whitewash. Earlier this month, Prince Harry lost the case he had been building towards for years. The privacy action against Associated Newspapers, publisher of the Daily Mail. Mr. Justice Nicklin dismissed the claims. He found that the claimants had suspicions but had not proved unlawful, information gathering, and that there was a real possibility the material had come from legitimate sources. Harry's response was to call the ruling a complete and obvious whitewash and to say the court had gone to shocking lengths to exonerate the paper. Now, whatever you make of the case itself, and reasonable people disagree hard about the British tabloid press, publicly attacking a high court judge after a 436-page judgment has gone against you is not a strategy. It is a temper. And in Britain it went down roughly as well as you would expect. But look at what it actually costs him. This was the last of the three actions and the one he wanted most. That judgment is now the fixed public record. Not a settlement, not an apology, a finding. And the reaction to it turned a bad day into a second story, which is precisely the mistake his grandmother spent 70 years refusing to make. So, put the month together. Harry beaten in the high court and swinging at the judge. Meghan on a cooking program 11,000 miles from home, insisting she is the family type. And Oprah in Vanity Fair, wincing at her own most famous 6 seconds and calling them clarification. 5 years ago, those three people were the story. This month, every one of them is trying to be somewhere else when it lands. A receipt. So here is where it all comes out. That interview was not journalism, and it was never friendship. It was a trade, and both parties got exactly what they came for. Meghan got the most trusted name in American television to hand her a victim narrative, pre-approved, unchallenged, and delivered into 49 million homes on a Sunday night. Oprah got the royal booking that the actual royals, the sensible ones, the ones who had been trained for this, had spent 30 years politely declining to give her. Thick as thieves, right up until the returns dried up. And now, look at the pair of them. One is losing court cases and lifestyle formats. The other is in a magazine describing the most quoted question of her career as a piece of housekeeping. There is a horrible poetry to it. The woman who staked everything on being believed hired the most powerful believer on earth to sell it. And that same woman has now watched the tape back and can barely stand to be in the same sentence as it. And the people who come out of this with anything intact are the ones who said nothing at all. Diana, clever enough to send the invitation back. A queen who took every blow in silence and answered with 3 words. A family that put its head down and carried on doing the job. No rented garden, no camera crew, no love language, no product line. Just the work, done quietly, while 2 other people turned private pain into a format and sold it by the episode. That's what Oprah finally revealed, not a confession, a receipt. So, tell me where you land on this one. Who used who worse, Meghan or Oprah? Or are they 2 of a kind and you wouldn't trust either of them to mind your handbag? Drop your verdict in the comments because I read every single one of them. Hit the like button. It genuinely does help this reach the people who care about these stories. And subscribe right now, because in a few days we are taking that MasterChef appearance apart line by line. The edit, the framing, and the one moment in it that nobody is talking about yet. If you're not subscribed, you won't see it. This is Star Spotlight, where the smiles are for the cameras, and the truth is in what they're all so desperate to take back.